Told the cops I was driving. Yeah. So I went to jail. So went and picked my son up, took him to work. It was raining real bad. We stopped at a bar, had some drinks. He gets up on the freeway and runs into the back end of an 18-wheeler that was stopped on the shoulder. I had a bruise on my right breast, left hip. He had all kinds of blood all over his face, ended up having internal bleeding, had to have his spleen removed, but he wouldn't let the ambulance take him. His friend that he had been cheating on me, he had her come pick him up and took him to the hospital. Well, I went and sat in jail.
Okay. Yeah. Wait.
Yeah, he told the cops that I was driving, so they took me to jail for a DWI.
Did they even try to determine if that was the truth or not?
Mm-hmm. Nope. I had a wall that had crosses hanging on it, and one of the crosses fell, and I grabbed it and I threw it, just get away. They called the cops and told them I hit him with it. I went to jail.
Again? Wait a minute.
Yes, man. He put me in jail 4 times for assault. Houston Police Department is awful.
He has no proof of injury, bruise, scratch, nothing. He just calls the police and says, she hit me and they show up and take you to jail?
Yes, ma'am, they did. There's nobody out there that's worth it. That's what, not a person on the face of this earth that is worth getting your beat. Don't believe that they'll change, because they won't. If they can get away from it, get away from it. Recognize the red flags. The devil works in mysterious ways. He can transform into anything. And an abuser is just that. And you can't fix them. You can't.
What's up, beautiful people? It is your favorite light, MB. Welcome to another episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are shining light on the darkness that is domestic violence and abuse. If this is your first time here, welcome. I need you to understand this. We got 3 simple goals: to educate, empower, and encourage. We want to educate anyone who has never been in an abusive relationship, doesn't understand the complexities of abusive relationships, and don't know why folks just won't go. We are also here to empower all of our survivors to stand up and share your story without shame, fear, guilt, or judgment. You are strong, you are powerful, and your voice deserves to be heard. And for all of those who are currently suffering in silence, we are here to encourage you. Listen, you are not alone. You are not crazy. Abuse is not normal. Your feelings are valid. And despite how it may look and feel in this very moment, there's always a way out, and we urge you to seek support. Now let's go ahead and hop up in this thing, because we're going to rise above these insecurities, release the burdens of shame and guilt, and revive our God-given power, purpose, and passion the confidence way, because we about to light it up. Okay, y'all, you know what it is. It's another amazing episode of the Confidence Way podcast. And on this episode, we have this beautiful, inspiring, courageous, strong, amazing spirit light woman who is known to the rest of the world as Paula. Welcome to the show, Paula. Pew, 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 pew.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's our privilege. It's our honor to be able to share this space, this moment in time with you, and to be able to experience some things that you've experienced through story, so that we can help change the world, and help hopefully have other people be more alert on what to look for and how things transition from okay to not okay. And that happens real quick. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Were you ever around any kind of abuse or acknowledged any abuse growing up?
As far as between my parents, no. My mom divorced my father when I was probably about 5 or 6, and then she remarried. He adopted us, and we didn't, if they argued, they went into the bedroom. They never did anything out in front of us. And then, let me see, when they divorced and we moved to Houston, we didn't have any kind of issues like that either. I married very young, so I got out of the house when I was about 16. So I didn't see much of anything after that.
Okay. Now, you said when your mom remarried, her new husband adopted y'all. So do you have a relationship with your dad, or was that kind of estranged once they are divorced?
Well, when she divorced the stepdad, the one that adopted us, then she got me back in touch with my biological father. And I had a relationship with him up until he passed away. So he passed away in 1996.
Okay.
And then my stepfather has since passed away as well. I think he died in 97 or 98. So, but I didn't have a relation after, after, uh, yeah, I think I moved back to Dallas for maybe about 6 months or a year. And I lived with him and his new wife. But then after that, I didn't have a relationship with him. He was a pathological liar. So it just problem after problem after problem. I liked my stepmother better than I liked him.
Wow. So then you got married at 16. What prompted you getting married so early?
Well, we found out I was pregnant, and my mother told me, well, she didn't tell me. I wasn't given the opportunity. She told Michael, that's my first husband, told him, you either marry her or you never see her again. And I was like, okay, thanks for asking, because I didn't want to get married. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm glad we did, because I ended up with 4 beautiful children. I've gone through a lot. My second child passed away when he was 18 days old. He was a SIDS baby. So, I learned and for probably about 10 years, I blamed myself, because I didn't know enough about SIDS. But then I had two boys, and then I had 2 girls. So, but they're all grown and have beautiful families of their own now.
That's amazing for that to transition and turn out to that. And then I know you love being the mother of all these beautiful, amazing people in the world.
Yeah, because I've even adopted 2 more children. My second husband, we dated for about 3 years before we got married, and he got diagnosed with cancer, and he had surgery and everything. He was in remission. Well, we decided to go ahead and get married, and we were married a year, 8 months, and a week when he passed.
Paula.
It's crazy. I was 32. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he's been gone 24 years.
When I tell you, you never know what a person has lived through, that's bananas.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I adopted his daughter 6 days before he passed away. That was when everything went through. And then my youngest son is 22, and I've had him since birth. I brought him home from the hospital.
Oh my gracious. And both of those relationships, both of those marriages, they were both healthy to a certain extent?
Yeah, like I said, with my first husband, I think it was his upbringing. He lived in a household where, his mom didn't work. She stayed at home, took care of the kids. His dad went and worked, and, he was an alcoholic, and, all the time accused, his Michael's mother of cheating on him and everything like that. And then, she finally got away from him. I think it was, I think her youngest was probably like 15, 16 years old whenever she finally got away and just moved on. She couldn't deal with it anymore. But Michael was raised in that kind of atmosphere. So it's like that's all he knew. But I mean, and after the fact, he and I, became friends. So we put put our differences in the past and just left them there. And we were really good friends. I was somebody he could talk to because his wife had passed away, and then he passed away 6 months later. And it's like, yeah, she had she was septic, and then he had a heart problem, went all of his life, never knew it, and then went in to have surgery and never came out.
Oh my goodness.
But so, and then my second husband, out of the 5 years total that we were together, I think we might have had 5 arguments. And I mean, so that wouldn't, we got along really well. My kids loved him. You know, I say he's my soulmate, you know, so I've already had the perfect love. And I thought that it was kind of like that with POS. But turns out that was a mistake. But even my third husband, you know, he and we remained friends. And he worked at a big oil and gas company here. He was the IT manager, and he was there for like 35 years. And when he decided to retire, he decided to stop doing everything. You know, he just wouldn't do anything. He didn't want to go anywhere. He would take a bath about once a week, or a shower about once a week, you know, but he was like, well, I'm not doing anything. I was like, it doesn't matter. But
so it's like not that do you think he was depressed about not having a job or something?
I kind of think so, but you know, he's a big tough guy. He would never admit to that. But yeah, we dated for 7 years before we even married. Yeah, we got married on our 7th anniversary, and then we were married for 6 years. So, but like I said, you know, it was a we didn't argue either. You know, if he got mad at me about something, he just wouldn't talk to me, and I'd have to send him a text message or an email. Hey, what do I do now? And that was part of the thing. You know, I always thought that I did something wrong, and it may not have been that I did anything wrong. You know, I see that now, but a whole lot had to happen for me to be able to look at it that way. But no, and then like I said, whenever he came back into, you know, whenever we reconnected and everything, and for the first, like I said, the first month we were together, he cheated on me, and I was stupid enough to forgive him. And that was when I should have just got up and walked out. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have got up and walked out, because it wasn't a healthy relationship. It ended up ruining my relationship with my children. Yeah, my kids hated him. They didn't want anything to do with him.
And we're talking about POS right now, homeboy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, they. My youngest daughter, she and I were very, very close, and she wouldn't let me around my granddaughter. She was like, nope, as long as you're with him, no. Okay, so. And then
he's the one that, is he your third husband? Are they the same
no,
person?
he and I were never married.
Okay.
Yeah, he and I were never married. We were supposed to get married. Let me see. At first, it was going to be 2/2 of 22. Then we got into an argument or something. So then we kissed and made up, and then it was going to be 2/22/22. That never happened. You know, we just decided no. And he liked to play the victim. That he had gotten rained out at work. We went and picked my son up and took him to work. I had my house in LaPorte, and my son worked in Crosby, so it's a 30-minute drive, and my son didn't drive. So went and picked my son up, took him to work. It was raining real bad. We stopped at a bar, had some drinks. went to another bar, had some more drinks, left there, and rain. He gets up on the freeway and runs into the back end of an 18-wheeler that was stopped on the shoulder of the highway. Told the cops I was driving. Yeah. So I went to jail.
Okay. Yeah. Wait.
Oh yeah, he had all kinds of. He told people that he fell asleep in the passenger seat and that I unbuckled his seatbelt. He told people that he was stuck up on the dash and that it took 5 people to pull him off. There was one witness, and that witness didn't come up on the scene until both of us were out of the vehicle. Totaled my truck. I hadn't even made the first payment on it. Totaled it. But yeah, he told the cops that I was driving, so they took me to jail for a DWI.
Did they even try to determine if that was the truth or not?
Nope.
Now, how far along in the relationship are y'all close to the end of the relationship when this happens?
Well, that was in 2021. So that was almost a year into the relationship.
Okay, back us up, Paula. So, because this is okay. Let us know what happened. You ended up getting divorced from your third husband because he retired. He goes through depression, and he's just not. I mean, he's not being a husband. He's almost just being like a mole on the sofa. Yeah. I'm imagining.
Yeah, I mean, and we let me see. He retired in 2016. We didn't divorce until 2020.
Okay.
So I mean, it wasn't like boom, just right away. No, I tried to make things work, and it just wasn't working.
So y'all get divorced in 2020. Going through a whole pandemic. When do you meet homeboy?
Well, like I had actually met him 20 years. Well, in 2004. Yeah, 2004 is when I actually met him. We dated for like 6 months. Never saw it. Well, when he found out that my whenever my third husband and I were getting married, he got so upset. Oh no, you come in here, trying to get me to come in his house. He was saying kind of vulgar things, come in the house, let's screw, basically. And I was like, no, I'm in a relationship. I'm fixing to get married. This isn't happening. And then I didn't see him again until 2020. So, like I said, and it was at the end of 2020. So then it was in June of 21 that we had the wreck. He ended up, and the cops really should have been able to tell that he was the one driving because his face was all beat up, 5 airbags deployed. The driver's side, the steering wheel, 4 on the passenger side. I had a bruise on my right breast, left hip. He had all kinds of blood all over his face, ended up having internal bleeding, had to have his spleen removed, but he wouldn't let the ambulance take him. He had his friend that he had been cheating on me. He had her come pick him up and took him to the hospital. Well, I went and sat in jail. Red flag.
Okay, so y'all reconnect in 2021.
2020
after almost 20 years. How was it? Take me back to the beginning. So y'all meet up, y'all start talking. Like, what is his character like? How is he approaching you? Is he just picking up as if y'all never left off? Or is he kind of showing things to you and he's like, I'm a different person. I'm a nice guy. What is it like?
Well, no, I mean, he's he's one of those silver tongued devils. He's got this. He puts on a great show. He's always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Never touched a car door. I never ever touched a car door. Door going into a restaurant, door coming out of a restaurant. Never once did I ever put my hands on a door, because that's his dad raised him. Hey, no, you do everything for the woman. So, I mean, that's why I say he was a silver tongued devil, and I actually met him in a club. We had gone dancing, and he could dance, and I just loved it. So that was how we met the first time. Then when we reconnected, we didn't go to the bars or go out dancing like that. I think we went one time, but it was just he'd tell you what you want to hear. It's like he knew what you wanted to hear, and that's what he would do.
So how long would you say, once y'all reconnected in 2020, how long would you say it went in that good feeling phase before things started to make you go, something's not quite right?
Well, and I knew, because like I said, a month into it, he cheated on me. And then I was over at his house, and I was getting ready to go to work, and he had his phone on silent, but he had it face up, and the phone rang, and I looked down, and I saw, it said Miss Linda, and I'm like, and just, I had a major panic attack, anxiety, I was shaking so bad. And he was like, just calm down, she's just a friend. Of course, that's different story, but and there again, that was another sign that I should have just walked out and never came back, because he'd sit there and tell me, oh, I'm not doing anything, and he'd tell me, well, I can't talk to you while I'm at work, I'll call you when I'm on my lunch break, but then but don't call me. But yet he was on the phone with her all night long. And so, like I said, there again, red flag, red flag, red flag. I thought I loved him. No, I knew I loved him, but I think it was the idea of being in love, not actually loving him. So,
you think that that's what made you stay after the red flags? Like, you saw the red flags.
Do you
think it was just the idea of really wanting to just have that embrace again, that relationship again with someone who cares, you care for?
Yeah. And because it was nice, and and I look at him, and I look at, my first husband, my second husband, and my third husband, and it's like, he doesn't even fit into any of their categories. He's a completely different kind of person. And there again, I should have seen the signs. But what he would do, if we got into an argument, I would walk away from it, because I don't like to argue. I don't, and don't, he would sit there and just keep it going. And I'm like, Joe, just leave me alone. Get away. I went into the bedroom, shut the door, put stuff in front of the door. He pushed it open, and I slammed the door, and it pushed it again. And I had a wall that had crosses hanging on it. And one of the crosses fell, and I grabbed it and I threw it, just get away. He called the cops and told them I hit him with it. I went to jail.
Again? Wait a minute.
Yes, man. He put me in jail 4 times for assault. Telling Houston Police Department is awful.
He has no proof of injury, bruise, scratch, nothing. He just calls the police and says, she hit me with, and they show up and take you to jail?
Yes, ma'am, they did.
Y'all, this is bananas. Paula, I can't tell you how many stories and conversations I've had when the woman was actually abused, called the police, and they didn't arrest a single person.
I've heard about that. I have heard about that. And it just, to me, that makes no sense. But I mean, there was one day we had gotten into an argument. We were driving home. We stopped at a red light. I got out of the truck and I walked. It was a couple of miles. I do better walking when I'm mad because I'll just truck along. When I got to the house, I got in and my phone was in his truck. I was going to try and find somebody to come pick me up to get me away from there. Well, he pulls up to the house. Here comes the cops. So then this is like a second time in less than a year. So then they charged me with a felony.
You're lying.
No, ma'am. Went to jail.
Wait, because it's too. Wait just a second. You get out the truck. You're walking home.
I walked home.
By the time he gets home, the police are behind. What did he tell them?
Told him that I hit him. I stopped. We were stopped at the light. I put his truck in park, turned the key off, threw the key out the window, and walked. He had to find his key and all that. But yeah, he called a buddy of his. Somebody else helped him find his keys. By the time I got to the house before he did, and he pulled up, and there was a parking lot across the street from where he lived. He parked over there, sat there and waited for the cops to show up. They came in and arrested me.
You have a felony on your record for walking away from a verbal argument.
Oh no, it ended up getting dismissed.
Okay.
But it was, but the crazy thing was this judge, and I wish he would have gotten this judge because I got out on a $10,000 bond. So they had to pay $1,000. Well, then I had to be back in. I got out like early Sunday morning. I had to be back in court on Monday. So I go get to the courthouse, sitting there waiting. And this is during the pandemic. So, she's doing everything via Zoom. And
you had to show up physically and she's doing everything via Zoom?
Even the attorneys. The attorneys are all on Zoom. The only person allowed in the courtroom is the bailiff and the person that's going before the judge. So I'm standing there, and she revokes my bond and upped it to $60,000. Yep. My attorney was pleading with her. Look, she's got a job. If she loses her job, she's going to lose her car. He was begging and pleading with her. She said no.
Why? Do you have any idea why she would do that?
She got in trouble because she let somebody out on bond after, a domestic violence case. And I think the guy ended up committing murder. She's got a few civil trials pending, or civil cases pending against her.
So not only are you being charged and serving time for something you didn't do, now you're being charged and serving more time because somebody else made the wrong decision. That has absolutely nothing to do with you.
Yeah. And I lost my job. I lost my car. I couldn't stay in my house because she put me on house arrest, 24-hour house arrest. So I couldn't even stay at the house. I had to find somebody else to stay with.
How did you get out of that?
He finally signed a paper. Nothing, because I spent the money to hire an attorney for the DWI, and it was one of those attorneys that handled the felony part of it. And with the DWI, it was coming up on the 1 year, and he was like, "Look, this needs to get settled." So the guy that was handling the felony one, Joe said, "No, nothing happened, blah, blah, blah," and just going on and on and on. And so she finally said, "Okay, dismissed."
Okay, so did the felony incident happen before or after the DUI incident?
After.
Okay, so in 2020, you got arrested the first time.
21.
Early
June,
20.
Yeah, June of 21 was the DWI. And
wait, but the time that you went to jail for the cross?
That was later in the year.
Okay, so the DUI is the very first time you went to jail. He lies and says you were driving. They ask no questions. They don't pay attention to. They have zero detective work skills, period.
Exactly.
And they just haul you off to jail. And how long were you in jail for that?
Well, since it was during the pandemic, they left me in Baytown, which is another place right outside of Houston. They didn't take me downtown to Harris County. So, but it was just overnight.
So basically that was just sleep off the alcohol. And then did they give you a breathalyzer test?
No, because I wouldn't blow. They took blood, but I mean, even the DA was telling my attorney, "I think she's covering for him." And I'm like, "No, I'm not covering for anybody." They thought that I was covering for him. No, I was not driving that truck. But no, whenever, I mean, and now it was raining, I was cold, had shorts on, and I'm freezing. And I asked them for a blanket, and they were, "No, you're not getting anything." Okay, I'm having chest pains. You need to take me to the hospital. So.
Okay, how could they even think that you're covering for someone when you're denying the whole time that you even did it?
That's just that's the way the DAs are horrible. Our whole legal system is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Okay, Paula. So after he lies and sends you to jail the first time, you get back out the next day. Why didn't you leave?
With the felony incident?
No, just the DWI. How come you were like, you know what? You put me in jail. You have no remorse. I need to get up out of here because this ain't gonna work.
Yeah. And I, and it's crazy because I actually stayed away from him because he was in the hospital. He had to go in the hospital. I think he spent 13 days in the hospital. So I was going to stay away. I blocked his phone number and everything. And after I had taken my son to work, I was in a rental car. And I had taken my son to work, and I drove by the house, and I saw that because none of his family would tell me how he was doing, nothing. I just wanted to make sure he was okay. And I was sitting in the little parking lot across the street, and I saw that, he was home and he was okay. So I took off. Well, then he calls me on Messenger. He said, "Were you just at my house?" And I said, "No, I wasn't at your house. I mean, I wasn't. I was at the parking lot across the street. I could feel you here. I know you were here." Okay. I said, "Yeah, I wanted to see how you were doing." So, we ended up getting back together. But after that, that was in June of 21. He didn't go back to work, because he was off because of the surgery. Well, then he had to have, he blamed it on the wreck that he, messed up his rotator cuff, which it was already messed up before the wreck. But so, luckily with the job that he had, I filled out all the paperwork, for his insurance and everything. So he was able to get, short and long-term disability. So he was still getting paid while he was sitting at home. So, but yeah.
Okay. So y'all get back together after that incident.
Mm-hmm.
How is the relationship once y'all get back together? Does it just jump right into chaos, or y'all kind of like trying to?
No, we were trying, and he would make comments here and there, about the wreck, and I would just kind of shrug it off, because, but then, like I said, I saw where he had sent, people, friends of his, messages, saying that, I unbuckled his seatbelt. He told his sister that I tried to poison him. I was like, oh, I'm eating the same food you are. How am I trying to poison you? I said, you're right there when I'm cooking dinner. He, silver tongue devil. That's all I can say.
How long are you in a relationship with him before your kids start to back off from their relationship with you?
My youngest daughter, it was before the DWI. Yeah, because he, my cousin does karaoke stuff, and so me and my roommate went to a little bar that down the street from where I was living, and met him. He was up there, and then I got to meet his new wife and everything. Well, then said some pretty ugly things to me in text messages, and it upset me, hurt my feelings, because I mean they were pretty vulgar, and I sent them to my daughter, because that was the kind of relationship she and I had. After that, no, she didn't want nothing to do with him, and she was like, I don't want him around. I don't want him near my kids. I don't want him near me. And so you're going to be really surprised whenever I tell you the next. Let me see. It was so this was like a year after the DWI, because everything was done. The DWI got dismissed. The felony got dismissed. We there again. We went to this little bar, sitting there, having a few drinks and everything. He likes to cut up. I'm a serious person. Laugh and joke every now and then, but if I'm trying to be serious, don't come back at me, laughing and cutting up. And he was just doing that, and I was like, you know what, just take me home. So, but by this time, I'm living with him. I've given up my house, so we start going towards the house. Well, he's just running his mouth, and we're driving down the road, and I just took him through his truck into park. And he was like, you're gonna mess up my truck. So go a little further. I do the same thing. I was like, just let me out. But he wouldn't pull over and let me out, so that's why I kept throwing the truck up in park. He finally pulls over into a parking lot, and he gets out of the car, or out of the truck, because he has to use the bathroom. Well, then I locked the doors. I was like, no, you're gonna leave me alone. You're gonna cool off. I'm gonna cool off. Well, I had the windows cracked. He squatted down next to his truck, used the bathroom, feces, and wiped it on my face. Mm-hmm. And I was still stupid enough to go back to him. You see the word idiot? It's gone now.
This is a no judgment zone. the audacity of some people and the things that they think of to do to other people, regardless of how upset you are about whatever situation, it blows my mind. How does that thought even cross someone's mind?
I don't know. And so I had a friend of mine come and pick me up.
From where y'all were pulled over?
Yeah. Well, I walked down to a gas station off of the highway, and you know, so my friend had a friend over here in LaPorte. She picked me up, and then Renee, a former coworker, came and picked me up and took me out to her house. Well, then he kept calling me and telling me that I needed to come over there and get my stuff. Otherwise, he was going to put it out in the ditch and catch it on fire. I was like, you can't do that. That's all I have. I have no car anymore. I don't have anything anymore. Stop. He just kept on and kept on and kept on. So I was like, you know what? I get dressed and I start walking. And this was probably a good 15, 20 miles.
Why didn't your friend take you?
She took me to her camper. They had a camper parked in an RV park, and she went back home because she had to get up and go to work the next day. So she just let me stay at the camper. So then I had no way to go anywhere. So I took off walking. Well, he came and got me, and he was saying some very, very ugly, vulgar things, calling me just all kinds of nasty things. And, when we get to the house, you're going to strip your clothes off and you're going to do this and this and this. And I just sat there and I listened. So we finally get to the house. We go inside, and he said, I told you to take your clothes off. And I said, if you touch me, I said, I'll call the cops and tell them you raped me. Boop. He laid down and went to sleep.
Was he drunk at this time? So he was alcoholic.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
So while you don't even have a car. So what was the plan if he came to pick you up for you to get your stuff, what was the plan to get your stuff and get back out?
Have one of my daughters, because as long as I was getting away, one of my kids would have helped me. And he was fixing to go in and have his rotator cuff surgery. So this all happened. We went to, the next day he had to go to the doctor's office. They set up his time and everything for surgery. I go with him to surgery, and he wanted me to stay the night with him up at the hospital. Well, I purposely didn't take a bag because, me and my daughters already had this planned. And so I told him, I was like, I'm going to have to go back to the house. I said, I forgot to bring a bag. So my daughter met me at the house, and my girl is probably 5'7". She might weigh about 130 pounds, soaking wet. And she's tough. She ran the Chevron Marathon, 13 miles in 2 hours and 12 minutes. I mean, so she's a tough little girl. And she's got a gun. She brings it because he didn't live in the best neighborhood. She brings her gun with her. And she's like, she said, nothing's going to happen to you. I was like, I know. So she let me go and stay at her house. Well,
so when you left the hospital, you had his truck, you took it back to the house that y'all were staying at together. Did you get your stuff when she came over? So you unloaded all your stuff from his place. And then your daughter took you back to her.
I went to her house, yeah, and put all my stuff in her garage. And then, he wouldn't stop calling, and he would try every means of social media, everything. And I was like, you need to stop. You what you did to me was unexcusable. That I would have almost rather him slap me in the face, because at least I can say, oh, he only slapped me. But, the man actually wiped feces on my face, and I went back to him. And, but then, there again, my daughter told me, because she had just found out she was pregnant with my grandson. And her and her husband, we can't be under this kind of stress. If you're going to talk to him, you can't stay here. And all I was telling him is, we're not going to be together. I don't want to, can't do this anymore. So I had no choice but to leave her house, because, I did. I could have just stopped talking to him, but that's why I said that word idiot is gone now.
Do you, like, when you look back on this and you think about the decisions that you made, because you made it out, it's not like you were stuck there in the space with him. You got out while he was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. You were out several times. Mm-hmm. What do you think, if you can think like as deep as possible, what could possibly encourage you to go back to someone who mistreats you that way?
Because he'd lie to me and tell me, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen again. I love you so much. I never meant for any of this to happen, and everything like that. And I don't think it ever would have changed. He even went, he went into, well, there was another time at the end of December 2022, I moved out, and I went and stayed. I had no car, no nothing. A girl I used to work with came and picked me up, took me to her house, and had her husband took me back over to the house the next day. I got all my stuff, took it out there to her house, and she let me stay there at her house. Once I got my driver's, because my driver's license was suspended with the DWI stuff, and I didn't have the money to go get it. So they had went to New York for Christmas, and so I watched the dog, so she paid me for that. And then so I went and got my driver's license renewed. She let me use her car so that I could find a job. Let me use it to go back and forth to work until I could get money to get a car. And so during all that time, he finally decided that he needed to get some help. So he went into rehab. And that was when I was like, there would never be a chance for anything if you don't get some help. I said, you blame this all on me, because when we're drinking, I've had sleeve surgery, so it doesn't take much for me. And then especially if it's liquor instead of just beer. So, he just would always blame me for everything. And no, it's not me. It's you, because you keep just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So he went into rehab, got all better. Well, somewhat, because it's like he was in there for almost 2 months. And by the end, I had gotten my own place. And I told him, if we're going to try this again, there cannot be any drinking. None. As soon as it gets out, first thing he wants to do is drink a beer. And I was like, no. I told you, no. We're not going to do this. So they also put him on a pretty strong antipsychotic, because he was bipolar, schizophrenic type stuff going on. And after he got out, he was taking his medicine pretty good, and then he just stopped taking it. And that was whenever all hell broke loose.
So did they just release him? Just was it like okay, you've been here 2 months, you've finished the course, and now you're out, or was there signs that he had to prove that he had actually changed or improved?
Yeah, they had classes every day that he had to attend. This was um I forget, Westbridge. If you look them up, I mean, it's a pretty fancy place down here. It's a big house. People stay in there. They're not allowed to leave. You can smoke whenever you get a pass for the weekend. Not really the weekend. I think it's 2 hours, maybe 3. Yeah, I think it's just 2 hours they give you to go off the premises, but that can only happen one day. It's either Saturday or Sunday. You can't do both. So he was going through the whole 12-step program, talking to a psychiatrist, taking his meds, and everything was working great. He was like a completely different person. And it was a person I actually enjoyed being around. But,
So
like
you going to visit, like, did they have visitation and things? You were going to go visit?
Mhm.
How did you see his change happening?
We would FaceTime, and talk on the phone, and then I would go out there on the weekends. I did have 1 or 2 meetings with his counselor, at a group meeting, so that I could, we could just get everything out in the open, and me be able to let him know, hey, this is what you did to me. You may not have realized you did it, but this is what you did. I mean, I put it all out, and she was just looking at me like, kind of like what you were looking at me a while ago. But like I said, I thought that I had the original back. And like I said, he would, because I asked him, I was like, did you take your medicine? Because normally when he would take his medicine, 10-15 minutes later, he's nodding off. And I was like, did you take your medicine? Yeah, I took it. Okay, why are you still awake? And well, come to find out, he had stopped taking it. And we had gone, because this was all right before my birthday in 2023 now. So,
well, hang on now, because before we get to 2023, you said that there were 4 times that he actually got you arrested. Were all 4 times before he went to rehab?
Mm-hmm.
So what happened after it was the DUI, then it was the felony?
Well, no, there was a DUI, there was an assault charge.
The cross.
No, yeah, the cross. Then the next one was the felony, where I walked, and he told the cops. Then I don't even remember what the last 2 were about. But it's like each time, as the first time it was just a couple of days in jail. Then the next time it was like 8 days in jail, and then the next time it was 15 days in jail. Then the last time I spent 30 days. All total, I spent 72 days in jail.
So at this point, he's just building up a case against you, because anytime he says something the first time, there's no evidence. The second time, there's no evidence, but they don't even care at that point, because I see that you've been here before.
Yeah, because that's what he would tell the cops. You can look her up. She's been arrested for assault before.
This is bananas, Paula. Mm-hmm. And even after that, you still stuck around.
That last time, that was in December of 22. That was after I spent 30 days in jail, because I went in we were going to have my family come down for Christmas. My brother and my sister were going to come down for Thanksgiving. And I think he thought in the back of his mind that I was going to have them pack up all my stuff and I was going to leave. So there again, he's just instigating and had me thrown in jail.
And you don't remember what was said or what was done for you to go to jail that time?
No, I don't remember what all happened. It's we could just start arguing, and there was one time we got into it and he called a friend of his on the phone. Hey Chuck, I'm gonna need you to call me tomorrow and check on me. I was like, what are you doing that for? Well, in the state of mind you're in. I said, I was talking to you, being honest, and I'm crying because I'm upset. I said, I'm not gonna touch you. I got in my car and I left. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you sit there and call somebody and say something like that right in front of me? Like I'm gonna hurt you. I've never hurt you.
Now, at any point when y'all are dating, did y'all ever discuss his past relationship?
I kind of found out from his family, his sister, the mother of one of his best friends. I did look him up online and I saw that he was dating one girl but sleeping with another one, or he was living with one girl and fooling around with the other one. He went over to the one he was fooling around with. He went over to her house and his phone rang. Well, he didn't answer it, so she got mad, and they're both naked and she had fake nails. She reached over and grabbed a handful of stuff. So when she did that, he turned around and headbutt her. And I think he did some other things. I was told some pretty sick things that he did to her. Took a flashlight and tried to, ram it up inside of her. So he was sentenced and he got charged. This was a felony. He got charged with aggravated assault of a family member. He was sentenced to 4 years in state prison, served 20 months, and then got out on parole.
And did you know any of this before y'all started dating, or is this stuff that you found out after?
Well, a mutual friend had told me that he went to jail, and but of course, him being the smooth talker, oh, that's not what happened. That's not what, of course. But then, like I said, now I found out that every woman he's been in a relationship with, he's been abusive.
Physically?
And,
physically?
I was the only one. He never, until September of 2023, he never laid a hand on me. Never once. Besides wiping the feces on me. He would get in my face, put his, and call me names and stuff like that. The last time his favorite one was CUNT. And he'd get in my face and call me that. And finally, I just had enough. And I got right here, right next to his nose. I said, call me that one more time. He never called me that again. But, he, like I said, he would just push me. Not physically push me, but just taunt me, come on, and just be right there in my face, and just get me so angry. And I mean, because there was one time, there again, drinking, we get into an argument. I keep trying to tell him, get away, leave me alone. I got to go to sleep. I got to get up and go to work. He just coming in there pushing. And so I pushed him. And when I pushed him, he lost his balance and fell and hit his face, cut his face. He called the cops. And this is over here in LaPorte. And so the cop, then it's like, I'm leaving because I'm not going to jail. So I left and went and spent the night over at a friend's house. And my next door neighbor told me, she talked to the cops Told him, no, she didn't hit him. And so then the cop called me, you know, what's your side of the story? And I told him exactly what happened. And he said, okay. And he said, was he drunk? And I said, oh, yeah. And he said, yeah. He said, I kind of thought he was. And I said, so what's going to happen here? And he said, well, that's going to be up to the DA on whether they want to pick up charges or not. They didn't. But he was telling them the same thing. Oh, you could pull her record. You can see she's been arrested, for assault. But the LaPorte cops didn't fall for it.
In my experience, I've learned that a lot of times the person who is the abuser, even if they've it doesn't matter if they spent time in jail, haven't spent time in jail, if there's anything about charges or charges being dropped, like you have to take that serious because it happened. It's history that it happened. And when you pair it with their personality and how they're acting towards you in the relationship, you can see that it's a possibility. I have a friend who was telling me about someone she knew who was dating someone, and they pulled, public record, and homeboy had charges against him, but it shows that the person who filed the charges had dropped the charges. And I'm bringing this up because just because someone drops the charges on someone doesn't mean that what they were charged for didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, and he never had any other assault charges on him, just that one where he went to prison. It's like his buddy Rusty, when the judge put me on house arrest, I went and stayed over there. And, Rusty's mom and I got real close. And she was telling me about, there was 2 or 3 different women that he dated where he was physically abusive to him. He was abusive to his wife, to both of his daughters, I found out.
So we get to the end of 2022, December. Y'all were supposed, was it December or was it 2022 or 2023 where your family was supposed to come down for Christmas?
It was November. It was in November of 22. They were going to come down for Thanksgiving. We got into an argument about something. Boom, he had me thrown in jail. So yeah, that was the last I spent 30 days in jail. So once I got home, I asked him, I was like, did you talk to Linda while I was in jail? Oh yeah, but only like 5 or 6 times. Okay. Well, he goes in and he gets in the shower, and I pull up the phone bill, 150 calls and texts between them. So I was like, no. So I called my friend Michelle and I was like, hey, can you please come get me? He even called the cops again. The cops at least gave me a ride. They didn't believe him this time. They at least gave me a ride down to a hotel.
Hang on, wait. So he comes to pick you, he puts you in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's the one that comes to get you out of jail after the 30 days?
Mm-hmm. And the charges were dropped. So he comes and picks me up out of jail. And it wasn't the same day, probably the next day, whenever I confronted him about, or whenever I asked him if he had talked to the woman. And then we were going to eat or something. And when we got back to the house, I was like, that's wrong that you told me you only talked to her 5 or 6 times. And, but it was really this many times. And we started kind of arguing. So he called the cops again. And the cops came out there, and I said, I did not touch him. I said, I just got out of jail. I'm not ready to go back. And he kept, they'd take him in the one room and leave me out in the front. I said, look, just take me down the street. Let me get my stuff. Take me down the street to a hotel, something, so I can get away from here. And I had enough money to pay for the hotel, but they wouldn't take cash. So that's when I called my friend Michelle.
So that was it. It was really the Linda thing that was the straw that was like, you know what, I just can't.
Yep. And so for 6 months, you know, we would talk occasionally. No, it was longer than 6 months because he didn't get out of rehab until July.
So he went to rehab after all of this transpires,
Mm-hmm.
and you leave.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes to rehab.
Mm-hmm.
Then he comes out of rehab, and you're actually considering
Oh,
giving him a chance.
he moved in with me this time.
Did he lose his place while he was in rehab?
Kind of. You know, it was in a bad neighborhood, drugs, you know, people firing guns, everything every night. So that was just kind of contributing to his problems. So I was like, I'm not moving back in that house. There's been nothing but bad stuff going on over there. So I found me a house over here and he moved in with me.
Why did you let him? Why did you pick him up? One, two, why did you let him move in with you after he put you in jail 4 times and called the cops on you again?
Because I'm stupid.
You're not stupid.
Well, I
You
loved
just
him.
made bad
I
decisions.
really did. I mean, and it's getting easier now, you know, because he's not here and he's not part of my life. But, you know, even after September of 23, I still loved him. And that's what I mean, I go to counseling every week now. I mean, every week. And I have a great counselor. She, that's all been through the crime victims advocacy thing. They, well, I went through my job first at EAP. I get 2 visits, and I'm like, no. So I found this one. It's called Innovative Alternatives, and it's great. My
Are
first,
they nationwide innovative alternatives, or are they just
I think they're nationwide. I think so, but um, the first 9 visits were completely free, and then since I already had an application through the crime victims thing, they went back through there and everything and got me approved for 60 more visits at no charge.
that's a blessing?
Mm-hmm.
So people can just go online, because I want to make sure that if there's anyone listening who's been in a situation, like, in order for you to really heal from these types of things, this type of trauma, you need to talk to a professional. So
Yeah.
people can go online and just type, Google search innovative alternative therapist or something like that, and that'll
Yeah.
pull up.
Um, yeah. I know. I want to say that they're nationwide. Um, I'm gonna look while we're talking because I'm curious. But yeah, and even if they're going through and their county, wherever everything happened, that if they have the crime victims assistance program, the crime victims assistance program can help them, just as much as anything, because they gave me a whole list of, you know, shelters and stuff. I didn't need all that. I had a very good job. Um, I was off work for 3 weeks, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. My job paid me my full pay. Um, my coworkers came over to my house. It all happened on a Monday night, and then I got released on Thursday because my birthday was Friday, and I was like, I'm not going to be in the hospital on my birthday.
Wait, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on, hold on,
Oh,
hold on, hold
yeah,
on,
we're
hold on.
skipping.
Hold up. No. Okay. So 2023, you get him out of
Yeah, he comes out. He comes out
rehab
of rehab in July, the mid-July.
in mid-July. He moves back in with you.
Mm-hmm.
So then he stops taking his medicine.
Mm-hmm.
He
About a
starts
couple.
back drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens?
Um, the Sunday night, it was 22nd, September 22nd. he started, no, it was actually Saturday, the 21st, started hallucinating, telling me that there were people, you know, the people behind us, were watching us. And it's like, there's nothing back there. Oh, yeah, there's this black wire. It's going, no, there's not. There's nothing there. And I had went to bed. I found out from my neighbor. He called the cop or called 911, told him that it smelled like gas in the house. So the fire department comes out there, checks the house. There's nothing there. Then Sunday, I didn't know any of this until later. So Sunday,
So the fire department comes out Saturday, but they don't come inside to check to see if it smells like
they came inside, but I was in the bedroom asleep. He shut the door, so I couldn't hear anything. I mean, I'm a sound sleeper. But they came out there, and I guess they didn't have sirens because it was a non-emergency thing. But they let him use they wouldn't climb up in the attic. They let him use the little thing, and nothing up there. He thought people were up in the attic. So then the next day, he seems okay during the day. Well, then that evening, he's back and forth, getting up and going and checking outside in the back, checking out in the front. And I was like, what are you doing? I said, you need to stop. I said, I need to get some sleep. And I was like, if you don't get back in this bed, I'm done. So I'm able to lay down. Well, then he gets in the bed, but then he's going from the head of the bed to the foot of the bed, just back and forth. I was like, what are you doing? There's somebody out there. And I was like, no, there's not. That's the cat. We had a cat. So he's just continuously. Well, finally, I was able to fall asleep. So the next morning I wake up, and I should have realized something because he was already awake, and he never wakes up before me. So he comes in there. You want me to fix you some coffee? You want me to fix you some tea? I said, no, I don't want you to do anything for me. I told you, I'm done. So I leave and I go to work. My job is only about 6 miles from my house. So I came home at lunchtime to eat, go back to work, come back home. Well, nothing was taken out for dinner. So we did DoorDash, and it's like 7:30-ish. Yeah, 7:30. And I'm a smoker. Well, we both are. So he wanted me to go outside and smoke with him. I said, no, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Oh, just stay in here and watch The Voice with me. No, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. So I go in there and I lay down in the bed. And you know how you can feel somebody staring at you? And I'm laying there and I look over the door. What are you doing? I said, you need to stop. I said, you're freaking me out. And so I turn back over and I finally fall asleep. Well, then I feel him come and get in the bed with me. And all of a sudden, I just feel him hitting me. I thought he was hitting me. He was stabbing me.
What?
Yes. Stabbed me 13 times. Started stabbing me and then came around to the other side of to my side of the bed. And I had turned over, trying to, so that he wasn't stabbing me in the chest, turned over and he stabbed me, I think it was 6 times in my back. And he was sitting there screaming, you're telling people I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. You shouldn't be telling people I'm crazy. I mean, he's just going to town. And I'm telling him, as please stop, because I said, I'm having a hard time breathing. Well, I was able to reach my phone and hit it so that he couldn't see it. So he walks into the other room. And while he's going into the other room, I call 911.
Does he just walk away calmly? Like what?
Oh, no, he goes and gets another knife and turns around and stabs himself. And then it's a sheetrock knife, and he took and ran it across his throat. So, but And then he gets his phone and he's calling them, but he's telling them murder suicide.
He tried. Don't tell me he tried to blame that on you too.
Oh yes, ma'am, he did, because the cop took him outside handcuffed, and my neighbor was outside, and he was in there telling the cops, "Oh, look, she stabbed me." Yeah. Of course, they knew that his were self-inflicted, and they could tell that, mine were pretty serious. My blood pressure was 52/20. They started giving me blood in the ambulance. So they took me about 2 blocks, and I got to ride on the life flight, go to Herman Hospital, and I had my phone like this up against my chest. I had my purse, but I didn't realize I had it. And I said, somebody needs to call my daughter. Well, you're going to have to give us your phone. So I handed them my phone, gave them my passcode, and told them her name and everything. And so Lauren, my oldest daughter that I adopted, her and then my oldest biological daughter, Jessica, they both came up to the hospital that night. My youngest daughter couldn't because, the babies. So, but yeah, 4 days before my birthday. So my children could have been planning my funeral instead of celebrating, because I turned 55.
Were there any signs of him taking anything or anything that could have been laced for him to start hallucinating, or did he just?
My neighbor's son said that she saw somebody's vehicle over there a couple of times. But, when I'd ask him about it, there wasn't nobody here. There wasn't, just kept on saying that there was nobody there. But no, I didn't see any kind of signs. The only thing I figured is that I changed that. He had called a buddy of his that morning, and the guy didn't answer the phone. He texted the Chuck, his buddy. He said, I'll call you back in a little bit. And he said, please do. And then I sent him another text message and said that before this day is over, I'm going to kill myself or something like that. And, my first thought, because Chuck had my phone number too. And, of course, my first thought is, why didn't he call me and tell me that? Because things might have been a little different. But
when you came back home for lunch, was he there? And how was he? If he was, how was he acting?
He was there, just normal. Fixed me a glass of tea. I sat down and I heated up my food, and I was sitting there at the table. The cat jumped up on the table and licked my food, so I threw my food away, and he was like, "You're not going to eat?" I was like, "No, she licked the food. I'm not eating it." And then went outside, and I was avoiding him at all costs, except for the fact that I went home for lunch. I wouldn't sit in the dining room and talk to him. I walked outside and sat on the porch. He'd talk to me, and I wouldn't speak to him. I had nothing to say.
When he sent that message to Chuck, was that after you had left, after you left and went back to work after lunch?
No, that was when I left that morning to go to work. There was blood all over the house, or all over the bedroom. Of course, the police took the sheets and all that kind of stuff for evidence. And then I think he was in the hospital for like 2 days. Then they took him to county. But he's in there on $1 million bond. He was already out on bond because he had, he's a felon. And before he went,
when did he get the felony record? Was that from the
aggravated assault?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Well, and then he also had a felony DWI from 1997. It was 97. It was after his mom died, and he got in a wreck, and the person that he hit ended up getting hurt. So it was felony DWI with serious bodily injury. So anyway, he's not supposed to have a weapon outside of his. You can have it inside your house, but that's it.
Well, wait a minute. Is it because the felonies didn't have anything to do with weapons that he's still able to have a gun or something like that?
No, that's just the law. You have the right to have a weapon in your house to protect yourself, but you can't be driving around with it on the street.
Isn't there, because I don't know much about this, but isn't there a like a time frame, like if once you can't have a weapon, period, for some years?
I think there is. I'm not real sure, but he was driving around with the gun in his truck, so he got arrested. They gave him a $5,000 bond. He got out, and but then found an attorney and everything. The attorney was going to try and have it dismissed, and so then after all this happened, his attorney called me and he was like, what happened? And I told him what all happened, and he was like, man. I said, yeah. I said, I got a question for you. I said, do you think he's ever going to get out of jail? And he said, has he been to prison before? And I said, yeah. And he said, no, he won't ever get out. But now, he's got a court-appointed attorney. They're trying to say he was incompetent.
So the case is still open?
Yeah. He's still sitting in county jail. Hadn't even been to trial.
And how long ago was this?
A year and a half. They offered him 15 years. And that's it. 15 years. I mean, but
for attempted murder.
Well, see, that's the crazy thing. State of Texas does not have attempted murder. No, man.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Because I asked the same thing, and I said, why is he not being charged with attempted murder? And at that time that it was a female DA, and she said the state of Texas doesn't have attempted murder. But then the new DA that's on the case, because the other one got promoted, I asked him, I said, why isn't he being charged with a something other than just assault on a family member or aggravated assault on a family member? Why not aggravated assault with serious bodily injury? I said, because I almost died. And he said, right now with the charge that he's got, that's like just one step below murder.
Paula, I needed to give my people a better warning for this one. I was not prepared. Girl.
I mean, and the sad part about it is because of everything that I had to go through with him having me thrown in jail, I lost a really good job. I was making $60,000 a year at this job. And I had 4 or 5 suicide attempts. And then, so I had a suicide attempt with my third husband, and I took 65 sleeping pills. So I have this beautiful little tattoo here that says I am enough, and it's got January 8th, 2020 on it. And the reason why it has the 8th is because the 7th I took those pills, and I should not have woke up, but I did. So there was that.
When you woke up, before we go beyond that, when you woke up, do you even remember what you were thinking when you woke up after you assumed you wouldn't be waking up anymore?
Um, I was kind of in and out of it. Because James and I were still married at the time, my third husband, and he came. I fell asleep in the living room. I mean, I took the pills right in front of him. He never knew, but he said, "Aren't you going to work today?" And I tried to sit up, and I just kind of fell back down. And I never did tell the hospital what I did. They were checking me for a stroke, but yeah. Then I'd already had an appointment set up to see a psychiatrist because I was on antidepressants. And when I went in to see the psychiatrist, I mean, I walked through his office door and I just started crying. He said, "It sounds like to me you had a nervous breakdown." So I went into the hospital, a mental hospital, for 8 days and got my medication regulated and everything. And um, so that was one. Then the wreck, that was one that I was lucky to have lived through. And then, like I said,
Hang on, wait, not the wreck that he said he called the police, or not the wreck where he
said the DWI. Yeah, I mean, because even though I had my seatbelt on, I don't even know how fast we were going, and we ran into the back end of an 18-wheeler. I mean, and my truck was crushed.
Why would you consider that attempted suicide?
No. I wasn't just, I'm that cat with 9 lives.
I got you.
So it just something that I may not should have, or I probably shouldn't have lived through because of the severity of it, but I did. That's why I say I'm that cat with 9 lives, and I've already used 8. So I got to be real careful with this last one. But yeah, it just there was one of the times whenever I was on lockdown, that's what I call it. I took probably a whole bottle of Tylenol PM, big bottle, and it was severe enough that they had to give me some kind of medication that you have to get it for like 16 hours. It's an IV medication, and you have to be on it for like 16 hours. And so yeah, there's just, I'm glad to be away from him. Going to, like I said, going to the counseling helps a lot. If she sees that, because most of the time when I go in there, I'm usually pretty upbeat and everything. So if she sees me and I'm not quite so upbeat, she'll say, "Okay, what's going on? And you're not wanting to hurt yourself or anything." "No, ma'am." So I show her a picture of my grandbabies and I say, "These are my reason. They're my reason for everything. To make it, to live, everything." And it's not just them, it's my children, period. But I can't let what he did to me bring me down. I don't work with the nicest people. They tell me that I should be over this by now. And, I just want to turn around and tell them, when's the last time you got stabbed 13 times?
For once.
Yeah. Because when you can tell me you've been through this, then you can tell me it's okay to be over it now, or you should be over it by now.
But I mean, and how it's only 2025. That was a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. September 23rd, 2023. Oh, September 25th. I'm sorry. I have to look down at my arm because I've got it tattooed on my arm.
What would you tell someone now that you're on the other side and you're healing through this physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, you're seeking help? What would you tell someone who finds themselves in a relationship that is so unhealthy and they're aware that it's unhealthy, but they're still considering going back or staying?
don't believe that they'll change, because they won't. If they can get away from it, get away from it. Recognize the red flags. Um, the devil works in mysterious ways. He can transform into anything. And an abuser is just that. And you can't fix them. You can't.
And
There's,
honestly, I think that that's, excuse me for interrupting you. I think that that is the reason why a lot of people, one of the reason, many reasons why a lot of people stay is because we think that there's hope that there's a better side of them. And for some reason, we think that our loyalty and support and sticking through the bull junk is going to somehow show them that they can be better too, or somehow help them navigate towards wanting to be a better person.
yeah. And, I, because after all of this happened, and I was looking up different things with domestic violence and all that, and because I want to get a sleeve done on, on my left arm, I want it domestic violence. On the right arm, I want it suicide awareness. But, and I was kind of looking on, I think it was Pinterest, and it said, one of the tattoos says, love shouldn't hurt. And I don't completely agree with that, because when somebody dies that you love, that hurts. Now, love shouldn't be beating you, but yeah, love is definitely going to hurt no matter what. And the thing, they just need to recognize it. There's no amount of time, no amount of anything that is going to fix that abuser. Nothing. They can apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to do that. I love you. No. If you loved me, you wouldn't have put your hands on me.
Point blank, period.
Yep. Because next person will not have an opportunity to get that close. And like I said, I keep my guard up, and I really and honestly, I don't even care to be with anybody. Because of the, they had to do exploratory surgery on me, because, they had to go in and see if I had any kind of internal bleeding or anything like that. So I've got, a Frankenstein scar. There's probably about a 2-inch up, like almost between my breast, and then like right up at the top of my abdomen, going down past my belly button. Well, and then because of the way they cut it, and the fascia in there didn't heal right, so now I've got a big hernia on my stomach that I'm going to have another surgery for. And it's like, I don't want anybody to look at me, so I won't give anybody that opportunity. And maybe one day I'll start feeling better about myself, to where the body dysmorphia won't bother me. But right now, I've got to get this better, because nothing will ever change if I don't get this better.
That is so true. The only way our life gets better is if we transform our mind. And that's what the Bible tells us to do anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Renew our minds every single day. And one thing that I'm holding on to is like kingdom confidence, knowing that God created you with a purpose, on purpose. God has a plan for your life. You
Mm-hmm.
are the likeness and image of them. He knew us before we were even in our mother's wombs. And it's just the battle of the mind is the spiritual warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because once you give into the mind, you can lose any and everything. But if you can continue to renew your mind every single day, and lean heavily on what God's truth is for you in your life, but it just like you said, it takes time. It takes having grace with yourself. It takes encouragement. Something that helped me with some of my own insecurities was just making a list of all of the things that I appreciate myself for. I appreciate you for not giving up. I appreciate you for getting out. I appreciate you for still trying. Like any small thing that I could think of, and just reading it over and over and over again. And then forgiving myself for the decisions that I did make. I forgive you for staying. I forgive you for ignoring the red flags. I forgive you anything that I held on to as guilt and shame and regrets or bad decisions, just constantly, because forgiveness isn't something you can just say and it happened. It's something that you really have to convince yourself to believing for you to really get over any kind of trauma that was caused to you or caused by you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm with you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I'm with you with the whole transforming your mind.
And I'm not a holy roly person. I believe in God. I know without that man, I would not be here. I definitely know that for sure. Because like I said, I'm the cat with 9 lives. I've already used 8. So I'm walking treading very carefully. But there's an app, and it's Holy Bible app, and they have different plans in there that you to read and go through. And I started looking in there, and there's a lot that have to do with healing, forgiveness, overcoming trauma, after something like this. I mean, it's got tons of them in there for domestic violence. And my first husband's youngest sister, her husband used to beat on her all the time, and she'd always go back. And I was like, Deborah, why do you do that? And he was scared of me. I don't know why, but and he was really scared of my husband. But I couldn't get it through my head. I couldn't wrap it around myself to why. And like I said, he never touched me, never once laid a finger on me. But then I found out, the domestic abuse doesn't always have to be physical. It can be mental. Saying just ugly, vulgar things to me, like he did, calling me those ugly names, and it's like, oh, he was the whole time, minus about 6 months. After that, and there's nobody out there that's worth it. That's what, not a person on the face of this earth that is worth getting your ass beat.
Not a single soul.
Nope. Because they did it once, they'll do it again and again and again and again. And just got to watch, pay attention to the red flags. They're there.
They're always there.
Mm-hmm. And it's like I said, now whenever I meet people, it's like, oh, red flag, and just keep on walking. I would rather be by myself than to put myself in a situation like that again.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you taking, not only leaving the situation, getting out of the situation, but taking the necessary steps to get the consistent help to get on the other side of what you went through. Because it's, at this point, it really is, and it always has been in the relationship, all mental. And people don't understand why people stay. Is because there's a mental lack, there's a mental manipulation, there's a whole lot of mental things going on. The mind games, the mental gymnastics is just ridiculous. But you go through mentally, and you question yourself, and you're insecure, and you don't get it, and you convince yourself that it's either going to change or there's nothing on the other side. It's going to be worse on the other side, and all of these things. But I am proud of you for getting the help to overcome this and for sharing your story so that other people can see what abuse can look like before, or if it ever doesn't get physical. Abuse does not, like you just said, it does not have to be anything physical, but it does wear you down. It's emotionally draining. It's physically draining and
mentally. And I mean, that was the reason behind all my suicide attempts, while I was with him. It's like, because my kids weren't having anything to do with me, and then now he's doing this, and if I don't have them and I don't have him, why do I need to be here?
Yeah.
So, and that's why and it's like I know that God is watching over me. I know for a fact. And I wouldn't be here if he wasn't, especially after everything in the last 4 years. So, another good thing, like you were saying, journaling. When my husband died, I had a notebook and I wrote in it every single day. Well, and it was always, mostly at night, but I wrote in there. And then, after a while, I would go back and read it. It's like, because it's like, if somebody can't afford to go to therapy, or, 24 years ago, you didn't hear about people going for therapy. So that was my therapy, because I put everything in my heart was down on that piece of paper. And what the DA made me realize, and my counselor, is after everything, whenever it's time for him to be sentenced, I get to go up there and give a victim impact statement. And that's why I'm going to start writing it now, because every little, because I'll sit there and something will happen. I'll be like, oh, he did that to me. And so I want it fresh. I want to be able, it may take 2 or 3 years. I don't care. If I have to sit there and write for 2 or 3 years, that's fine. A judge better be very, very patient with me.
I know that's the truth, because there's a lot that needs to be said.
And I know eventually, because in one of those plans that I was reading, I will have to forgive him for doing this. I'm not ready to right now. I don't know when I'll be ready to, but I know I'm not right now.
You're amazing, Paula.
Thank you.
You are absolutely amazing. Y'all, I hope y'all all right. Paula hit us with the okie doke today. That setup was serious. Oh my gosh. But I can't thank you enough. I can't tell you how much of truly it is a privilege and honor to have this opportunity to hear your story, to have this, to be on this platform, to share with other people. I mean, it's healing for you. It's healing for people who don't know that they needed to hear it. And then I know that it's that sign that someone's like, God or whoever they look up to, I need a sign to know if this is for me to leave. And isn't that funny that we ask for that sign as if we don't really
Yeah.
need a sign.
Yeah.
We had the sign.
Oh, come on. I know what I need to do, but I need you to give me a sign to tell. Yeah.
No. Right. This that sign, sis.
Here's your sign.
So I thank you so much
for hopping. I enjoyed this. It's very therapeutic. Absolutely. Very, very therapeutic to be able to talk to somebody, talk to other people that have been through it. And, I never knew about any of this kind of stuff because, like I said, I had never dealt with it. And now I see it and reach out, talk to somebody, anybody that'll listen. And if people tell you you should be over it or don't talk to other people about it, they're wrong. They should never tell you that.
You talking to the wrong people. That's all that is.
Exactly.
But you definitely, because I mean, most of the time people stay in these relationships and these situations because they feel like they're alone. They feel like they can't talk to anybody. And if you talk to somebody, it opens up your heart and your mind to receive what you already know, which is you don't deserve this. You don't need to be here. Get up and get out.
Yep.
That's it. Well, on that note, Paula, y'all, shit. Woo! I don't know what y'all need to do after this one. Go decompress, meditate, or something. Thank you so much for showing up, for sharing your light, for shining your love, and all of the great things. This has been another amazing, amazing, amazing episode of the Confidence Way podcast, where we are overcoming insecurities, releasing the burdens of shame and guilt, and reviving our God-given power, purpose, and passion. The Confidence Way, y'all know what it is. We gon' pew, 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 confetti, 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 confetti.